The great hall of the Galactic Court was filled with voices. Thousands of alien delegates had come to see the trial. The chamber was vast, built of black stone and shining steel. High above, banners of many races hung down, their colors and symbols showing old rivalries and bitter wounds. At the center of the hall stood a single raised platform. Upon it sat the young cubs, chained, frightened, and silent. They were from the Kargath, a warrior species feared across the stars. Their people were known for conquest, raids, and bloodshed. These cubs were no more than 12 cycles old, still not yet fully grown, but to the galaxy, they were enemies. Their claws had touched weapons, and their eyes had seen battle. Now, they sat waiting for judgment. The air was heavy with anger. Delegates whispered each other, their voices sharp and bitter. Some shouted openly, demanding execution. Others called for a quick end, saying the cubs deserved no mercy. Above them all, the 3 high judges sat like cold statues. They represented the will of the galaxy. Their faces showed no pity. Their decision would not be questioned. One by one, the charges were read aloud. Villages burned. Colonies lost. Families torn apart. The Cubs' commanders had led raids against helpless outposts. Whole cities had fallen, and many had died. Yet it was not the commanders who sat in chains. It was the young ones, the Cubs who had followed orders they did not understand. The crowd roared as the crimes were listed. Every voice demanded the same thing. Death. Death for the Cubs. Death for their bloodline. Death for the enemies of the galaxy. The Cubs trembled. Their ears flattened. Their tails wrapped tight around their legs. They had been taught to be strong, but they were still children. They did not know why the galaxy hated them. They only knew fear. Then the lead judge spoke. His voice echoed across the hall, deep and final. These young of the Kargath stand guilty of bloodshed. The galaxy demands justice. By law, the penalty is death. Unless one stands in their defense, they will be executed when the sun sets upon this court. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The idea of defending the Cubs was madness. Who would dare? Who would risk the wrath of every race in the galaxy? And then it happened. From the shadows at the edge of the hall, a figure stood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in plain, dark clothes. His face was weathered, scarred by war, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Every alien turned to see him. Whispers spread like wildfire. A human, one of the Terrans. The man's boots echoed on the stone floor as he walked toward the judges. Calm, steady, fearless. The guards moved to stop him, but he raised his hand, and his voice carried across the chamber. I will defend them. The hall exploded with outrage. Shouts shook the walls. Delegates rose from their seats, pointing, hissing, cursing the human. Some laughed, calling him a fool. Others demanded his arrest. The judges stared down at him. You would defend the young of the Kargath? The lead judge asked. You a human whose colonies burned at their hands? The man did not look away. His voice was steady, clear, and strong. My name is Captain Elias Ward, he said. I fought against the Kargath. I know the cost of their war. But these Cubs are not guilty. They are children. They followed orders they could not refuse. If the galaxy kills them, then we are no better than the warlords who command them. The room shook with fury. Aliens shouted at him, spitting words of hate. Traitor, they cried. Liar, fool, human scum. But Captain Ward did not bend. His eyes stayed fixed on the judges. His voice cut through the noise like steel. Children do not deserve death for crimes of their elders, he said. If you call this justice, then the galaxy has no honor. The Cubs lifted their heads. For the first time, they saw someone standing for them. Their eyes were wide, filled with both confusion and hope. They whispered among themselves, not believing what they saw. A human, an enemy, was speaking for them. The judges leaned back, silent. Around them, the voices of the crowd rose higher, boiling with rage. But beneath the anger, something else stirred. Some listened, some wondered, some felt the sting of truth in the human's words. Elias Ward stood tall in the center of the storm. He did not raise his voice. He did not bow his head. He had declared his stand, and there was no turning back. The trial of the cubs had begun. The chamber of the galactic court shook with noise. Aliens hissed, growled, and shouted over each other. Some beat their fists on the railing. Others spat insults in their own tongues. The idea that a human would stand for the cubs was unthinkable. To most, it was an insult, a betrayal. But Captain Elias Ward did not move. He stood in the center of the storm, his face calm, his back straight. His eyes, sharp and unwavering, stayed on the three high judges above him. He had faced battlefields filled with fire. He had seen ships burn in the void. He had buried comrades beneath alien skies. Compared to those memories, the anger of the crowd was nothing. The lead judge raised his hand. The noise dimmed, though hatred still boiled in the air. His voice was heavy and cold. "You claim you will defend these cubs," the judge said. "Why? What could bind you, a human, to the children of those who slaughtered your kind?" Ward's voice was clear, carrying across the hall. "Because justice is not vengeance. These cubs are children. They were soldiers, yes, but only because their warlords forced them. I saw the Kargath on the battlefield. I know the difference between killers and victims. These cubs are victims." Laughter broke from the stands. Bitter, cruel laughter. A scaled alien from the Veth hissed. "Victims? Their claws are stained with blood. My world still burns." Others shouted agreement. "Kill them. No mercy. Spare no cub." Ward turned to face them. He did not shout. His voice stayed steady, but every word struck like iron. "If you kill children to satisfy your rage, then you are no better than the Kargath warlords who sent them. Is that the galaxy you want? A galaxy where every child carries the burden of their father's crimes." The words cut through the noise. Some aliens sneered, but others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The truth was sharp, and even those who hated it could not ignore it. The youngest judge leaned forward, his eyes narrow. "You claim to know their innocence, yet you admit they fought. They killed. They destroyed." Ward did not flinch. "They were forced. I have proof." Gasps rippled across the chamber. The words proof and force struck like sparks on dry ground. Even the other judges leaned forward, interest hidden beneath their cold stares. But the eldest judge's voice was harsh. "Evidence can be forged. Words can be twisted. What makes your claim different?" Ward's answer was simple. "I was there." The chamber froze. Silence spread like a tide. Every eye fixed on him. Ward went on, his voice calm, though his memories weighed heavy. "I fought the Kargath at Darren's Reach. I saw commanders drive their young ahead of them. I saw cubs thrown into fire while the warlords stayed behind. I saw fear in their eyes, not hatred. They did not choose the bloodshed. It was chosen for them." The cubs, sitting chained on the platform, lifted their heads. They looked at Ward with wide, searching eyes. Their ears twitched. Their breath caught. For the first time, someone had spoken the truth they carried in silence. The hall was not convinced. Voices rose again, though softer now, less certain. Some still spat anger. Others whispered doubt. The lead judge slammed his gavel. "Silence. This court is not a place for speeches. You claim to defend the cubs. Very well. Present your case. But know this, the galaxy demands blood. To stand against it is to stand alone." Ward met his gaze without fear. "Then I will stand alone. Better that than stand with injustice." The hall erupted again, but this time the sound was different. Some still shouted for death, but others murmured uneasily. For the first time since the trial began, a seed of doubt had been planted. The cubs turned to each other, whispering in low tones. Their language was guttural, harsh, yet even in its rough edges, one word repeated again and again. "Protector." The judges ordered the trial to proceed. Witnesses would be called. Records would be shown. The galaxy would watch. But already, the storm had shifted. Already, the human had changed the air of the hall. As the guards led the first witness forward, Captain Ward did not move from his place. He did not bow. He did not waver. He stood with the calm certainty of a man who had chosen his path and would not turn back. The cubs watched him with silent awe. in their eyes. The fear had not vanished, but something new had joined it, something they had never felt before in this hostile court. Hope. And so, the trial moved forward, but nothing in the galaxy would ever see it the same way again. The great hall of the galactic court grew darker as the trial pressed on. The banners above seemed to hang heavier, and the air itself felt heavy, as though it carried the weight of centuries of blood. The cubs remained on the platform, chained and silent. Their eyes followed every sound, every movement, but their small frames trembled under the cold stares of thousands. Around them, the crowd buzzed with hatred. They did not see children. They saw enemies. They saw reminders of burned worlds and broken families. The first witness was brought forward. She was from Ruthless, a gentle species known for their songs and gardens. Now her voice was broken, roughened by grief. She told of the night her colony was attacked, how Kargath raiders poured from the sky, claws tearing, fires spreading, screams rising. She had hidden in the earth beneath her home, listening to the cries of her family as they burned above her. When her story ended, the hall was silent for a heartbeat. Then the crowd roared, filled with fury and hunger for justice. The cubs lowered their heads, their shoulders shaking. Though they had not been the ones who led the raid, the weight of the Ruthless woman's pain pressed on them like chains heavier than steel. Captain Elias Ward stood still. His eyes were hard, his jaw tight. He let the silence linger, then spoke. Her story is true. I do not deny it. I have seen the Kargath burn worlds. But ask yourselves, were these cubs the ones who planned it? Were they the ones who commanded it? Or were they tools in the hands of those who sit free and laughing while children take the blame? Some in the crowd sneered, shouting him down. Others muttered uncertainly, shifting in their seats. The judges gave no sign of emotion. A second witness came. This one was from the Veth, a reptilian race. His scales were scarred, his tail bent from an old wound. He told of fighting against Kargath youth on his world. They were strong enough to kill, he hissed. Strong enough to strike down my people. Strong enough to spill blood. Do not call them children. Call them what they are, soldiers. Soldiers deserve the soldier's end. The crowd cheered him. Many slammed their fists in agreement. The word death rose from the stands again, louder this time, harsher. Ward's voice cut through the chaos, steady as iron. And who gave them their weapons? Who put them on that battlefield? Do you kill the blade or the one who wields it? These cubs were wielded. They did not wield themselves. His words drew anger. Aliens cursed him, calling him blind, calling him traitor. The noise rose until the hall seemed ready to tear itself apart. The cubs pressed close together, their chains clinking as they shrank from the hate around them. The eldest judge raised his hand, and silence, heavy and reluctant, filled the chamber. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. Captain Ward, you defend them with words, yet their claws are not clean. They have killed. Blood is on them. Do you deny this? Ward's eyes locked on the judge. I do not deny it. I deny only that they chose it. A child can be forced to hold a weapon. A child can be forced to strike. That does not make the child a monster. It makes the one who forced them the monster. The hall erupted again, but this time the sound was not pure fury. Beneath the anger, there was division. Some whispered that perhaps the human was right. Others spat that he was a fool. A moment later, a voice rose from the crowd. An older alien, scarred and tired, spoke without being called. When I was young, my people were conquered. I, too, was forced to fight in wars I did not choose. If I had died then, I would have died as guilty as these cubs stand now. Yet I lived, and I was freed, and I became more than what I was forced to be. Gasps spread through the hall. The guards moved to silence the alien, but the judges allowed him to speak no further. Still, the words hung in the air like a seed waiting to grow. The cubs' eyes flickered with faint light. For the first time, they saw not only hate, but doubt. A small crack in the wall of fury around them. Ward stepped forward, his voice low but strong. If you kill them now, you prove the galaxy is ruled not by law, but by hatred. You prove that we have learned nothing from war. You prove that mercy has no place among the stars. The hall trembled with noise once more, but now it was a storm with many voices. Rage, doubt, fear, and the first whispers of something new. The cubs looked at Ward. For the first time, their trembling slowed. They saw in him not just a defender, but a shield. The trial was far from over. But already, the galaxy had begun to feel the weight of its own hatred. The trial chamber felt heavier with every passing hour. Witness after witness came forward. The stories of loss piled higher, each one darker than the last. The cubs sat chained, their heads bowed low. The crowd's fury was a living thing, filling every corner, pressing down like a storm that never ended. Captain Elias Ward stood in the center, calm but sharp-eyed. He listened to every story, every word of grief and rage. He did not deny the pain. He did not challenge the truth of burned homes and broken families. But he waited. He waited for the moment when the storm could be split apart. At last, the lead judge called a recess. The crowd buzzed, restless, their voices like a swarm. The cubs were led back into a holding chamber, guards pulling them by their chains. Ward followed, his boots echoing against the steel floor. Inside the small chamber, away from the roaring crowd, the cubs sat close together. Their eyes, wide and uncertain, followed Ward. They still did not know why this human stood for them. They had been taught that humans were enemies. Yet here he was, risking everything for them. Ward crouched low, meeting their eyes. His voice was steady, softer now. I know you fear me. I know you do not trust me. But I also know the truth. You were forced. You were ordered to fight. The smallest cub, his fur rough and torn, gave a sharp hiss. Orders or not, they will kill us. No one cares for truth here. Ward's gaze did not move. That is where you are wrong. Truth is a weapon, and I carry proof. From inside his coat, Ward drew a small device. Its surface shimmered as he touched it. A hologram flickered to life, casting pale light across the steel walls. The cub's eyes widened. The image showed the face of a Kargath commander, massive, armored, his eyes burning with cruelty. His voice came clear, sharp as a blade. You will lead the raid, or you will die by my hand. Obey, and perhaps you will live another day. Refuse, and your blood will stain this floor before the sun sets. Gasps broke from the cubs. They remembered those words. They remembered the fear, the cold claws of command that had forced them into fire. Ward's voice was quiet but strong. This recording was taken from a battlefield I fought on. I recovered the data myself. It proves you were threatened. It proves you had no choice. The cubs stared at him in silence. Hope flickered in their eyes, fragile but real. When the trial resumed, the chamber filled again with noise. The crowd wanted more blood, more fury. The judges called for order. Ward stepped forward, the device in his hand. I bring evidence, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Not stories, not memories. Proof. The hologram flared into life. The commander's face filled the chamber. His threats echoed to the vast hall. Every delegate, every judge, every alien heard the words. For the first time, the court fell silent. The crowd, always loud and hateful, froze. The weight of the voice was undeniable. It was no rumor. It was no excuse. It was truth, cold and sharp. The youngest judge leaned forward, eyes narrowed. This is genuine? Ward met his gaze without flinching. Yes, verified by human intelligence records. I carry the files. You may examine them. The chamber erupted again, but now it was different. Some shouted that it changed nothing. Others whispered that it changed everything. A delegate from the Ralathai stood, her voice sharp. So they were forced. And what of it? Blood was still spilled. My family is still dead. Ward's reply was firm. And do you punish the knife or the hand that wields it? Do you punish the child who obeys or the warlord who commands? The silence that followed was not complete, but it was heavy. The question hung in the air, a weight no one could cast aside. The cubs lifted their heads. Their eyes met the crowd. For the first time, they did not look only with fear. They looked with something else. A plea, a spark of hope. The eldest judge's voice rumbled. This court will examine the evidence. but do not think it frees them. The galaxy demands blood, Captain Ward. One piece of truth may not silence centuries of hatred. Ward stood tall, his voice cutting clean. I do not seek to silence hatred. I seek to show the difference between justice and revenge. If you choose revenge, then you kill not only these cubs, you kill the honor of this court. The chamber shuddered with noise again. Rage, doubt, confusion. The galaxy was a storm divided, and in the heart of it stood a lone human, holding truth like a blade. The cubs leaned close to each other, whispering in their guttural tongue. The words spread among them once more, soft but steady. Protector. And in the shadows of the court, unseen by most, eyes watched. Eyes that did not want truth revealed. Eyes that would not let the cubs live, no matter what the evidence said. The trial was no longer only about guilt or innocence. It had become. The galactic court did not rest that night. Long after the judges left their high seats, the chamber remained alive with voices. Delegates whispered in corners, guards traded nervous looks, and reporters spread rumors across the stars. The hologram of the Karga commander's threats had shaken the hall. It had shown the cubs as victims, not monsters. For some, it cracked the stone wall of hatred. But for others, it was dangerous, too dangerous. Because if the cubs were seen as innocent, then who would the galaxy blame? And in the corners of the court, hidden from the lights, enemies began to move. The meeting in the dark, far below the main hall, in chambers not meant for the public eye, a group of powerful figures gathered. They were not judges, not witnesses, not speakers. They were the true hands that shaped the court's outcome. The first was High Minister Kreth, a broad-scale reptilian with golden eyes. His people had lost entire fleets to the Kargath. He wanted revenge, not justice. The second was Matron Vera of the Sci-fi, a slender being whose voice could sway whole alliances. She thrived on keeping enemies alive just long enough to serve her people's political needs. Others filled the circle. Silent financiers, shadowy admirals, masked envoys from secretive worlds. All of them shared one goal. The cubs must die. They cannot be spared, Kreth hissed, his tail scraping against the floor. The galaxy demands blood. If these cubs walk free, it will show weakness. Vera tilted her head, her voice smooth as silk. Not weakness, Minister. Chaos. If the cubs live, old grudges may fall apart. War may lose its fire. Entire coalitions depend on hate. Hate feeds our power. Shall we let one human destroy that? The others agreed in low, rumbling tones. The evidence Captain Ward revealed was dangerous. It threatened their carefully balanced order. It threatened the unspoken truth, that war was profitable, that vengeance was useful, that fear kept planets in line. So they decided the cubs would die. And if Elias Ward stood in the way, he too would fall. The whisper of assassins. Captain Ward did not sleep that night. He stood watching the cubs, holding chamber, eyes sharp, every muscle ready. He knew too well how justice was twisted by power. He had seen it on battlefields, on colonies abandoned to politics. The cubs lay curled together, whispering in their guttural tongue. Their eyes still carried fear, but where once it was only despair, now there was also something fragile, trust. They trusted him. Ward did not tell them of the danger that stalked the shadows. He had seen too many trials corrupted, too many justice halls turned into killing grounds. He knew enemies would move before dawn, and they did. From the vents above, a shape slid in silence. Black armor, blades glinting faintly. A hired killer, sent by unseen masters. The assassin dropped soundlessly, moving toward the cubs like a shadow come to life. But Ward was waiting. The click of his sidearm broke the silence. Step away. The assassin froze, then whirled with inhuman speed. The blade flashed, striking down. Ward met it with steel, the sound ringing sharp in the chamber. Sparks flew as blade and weapon clashed. The cubs cried out, chains rattling as they pulled back in terror. Ward moved fast, striking hard, his body low and steady. The assassin fought like a ghost. Every move meant to kill. But Ward had faced worse. He had fought Kargath warlords in burning cities. He had fought pirates in the darkest space. He did not fall. At last, with a heavy strike, he slammed the assassin against the wall. The blade clattered away. The cub stared wide-eyed as Ward pulled the mask away. The face beneath was alien, twisted with hate. "Who sent you?" Ward demanded. The assassin spat blood, hissing. "You cannot protect them. The galaxy will never let them live." Guards burst into the chamber at last. But Ward already knew. This was no lone attack. This was a message. Someone powerful wanted the cubs dead, no matter the trial. The judges debate. The next day, the court gathered again, but whispers filled every corner. Rumors of the attack had spread. Some said it was proof of corruption. Others said it was a desperate act of vengeance. The three judges sat high above, their faces like carved stone. Behind closed doors, they argued fiercely. "The evidence cannot be denied," the youngest judge said. "The cubs were forced. The recording proves it." The eldest shook his head. "Proof changes little. The galaxy thirsts for blood. If we spare them, riots will erupt. Entire systems will turn against this court." The third, silent until now, spoke softly. "Or perhaps we are blind. Perhaps this is not justice at all. Perhaps the human is right." Their words echoed, but no decision came. They were trapped between truth and politics, between justice and fear. Ward's stand. In the chamber, Ward stood once more before the galaxy. His voice was stronger now, sharpened by the night's battle. "An assassin came for the cubs," he declared. Gasps spread through the hall. "Not out of justice. Out of fear. Fear of truth. Fear of mercy. Ask yourselves, if these cubs are guilty beyond doubt, why send killers in the night? Why silence them before the trial ends?" The crowd buzzed with unease. Some muttered about corruption. Others hissed, still blinded by hate. Ward pressed on, his words cutting through the storm. "This trial is not about justice anymore. It is about power. It is about those who would rather spill blood than admit the galaxy itself is broken. If you kill them now, you prove them right. You prove that we are nothing but slaves to vengeance." His words struck deep. The cubs, chained and trembling, watched him with wide eyes. For the first time, they saw not only a defender, but a warrior fighting not just for them, but for something greater. The judges shifted uneasily. The crowd roared and split, voices colliding. Some demanded death louder than ever. Others shouted for mercy. For the first time, the chamber was not united in hate, the promise in shadows. That night, Ward returned to the cubs' chamber. He sat close to them, watching their fearful eyes. "Why?" the smallest cub asked in a broken voice. "Why do you fight for us? We were taught that humans hated us, that humans wanted us dead." Ward's voice was low, heavy with memory. "I have seen children die in wars they did not choose. I swore I would never let it happen again, not if I could stop it. You are not my enemy. You are proof that the galaxy can be better." The cubs stared at him in silence. Then, slowly, one of them reached out a clawed hand. Shackled, trembling, but reaching, Ward placed his hand over it, steady and strong. The cub whispered a single word, "Protector." Ward did not reply. He did not need to. The word was enough. The enemy's oath. But in the dark corners of the galaxy, the Shadow Council met again. The failed assassin had angered them, but it had not broken their will. "They must die before the verdict," Kreth hissed. "If the court spares them, we lose everything." Vera's voice was like poison. "Then we will not wait. We will strike within the trial itself. Let the galaxy see chaos. Let them see blood. The cubs will not leave this court alive." And so, in the shadows, plans were laid. Assassins sharpened their blades. Ships moved unseen. Allies turned enemies. The trial was no longer only about the cubs. It had become a war of truth against fear, of mercy against hate. The dawn rose over Court Station, though no real sun shone in the void. The artificial lights of the orbiting fortress brightened slowly, casting pale gold across the black stone walls. Yet inside the great hall, no warmth touched the air. The trial had reached its final day, and tension gripped every being present. It was no longer just a matter of justice. It was a matter of survival. The cubs sat chained at the center, small bodies hunched close together. Their eyes darted across the hall, seeing only hatred staring back. They could feel the weight of thousands of eyes pressing on them, as though every glare was a blade ready to strike. But when their gazes found Captain Elias Ward, something inside them steadied. The human stood as he always did, tall, unbending, unafraid. He was the only wall between them and the storm. The crowd was louder than ever. Some called for mercy, emboldened by the evidence shown. Others screamed for blood, fueled by loss and the whispers of shadow powers that demanded execution. Every voice clashed against the next, creating a chaos that shook the chamber. Guards stood tense, gripping their weapons, fearful that the fury of the mob might turn into violence. The three high judges entered, their robes trailing, their faces grim. Their silence commanded order, but only barely. They sat upon their thrones of iron and stone, staring down at the cubs and the lone human who defended them. The eldest judge's voice rang out, deep as a tolling bell. Today we will hear the final defense. When it is finished, this court shall deliver its verdict. Let all voices fall silent now, for what is spoken today will be written into the memory of the galaxy. The crowd hushed, though mutters still lingered. All eyes turned to Ward as he stepped into the center of the hall. His boots echoed against the stone. His scarred face was unreadable, but his eyes were fire. He began without shouting. His voice was calm, yet it carried every corner of the chamber. I have listened to every story told here. I have seen the grief in your eyes, the scars you carry, the pain that will never fade. I do not deny it. I do not pretend it is less than it is. The Kargith have taken much from you. They have taken from me as well. For a moment, silence clung to the hall. Even those who hated him could not deny his words. But these cubs, Ward continued, gesturing to the chained figures, are not the ones who chose war. They are not the warlords who burned your homes. They are not the generals who commanded fleets. They are children, forced, threatened, used. The evidence I showed you proves this. They were told to fight or die, and they obeyed, because that is what children do when death breathes down their necks. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some muttered in agreement. Others sneered. But Ward's voice grew stronger, heavier with every word. Ask yourself this. If we kill them, what do we prove? That mercy has no place in the stars? That vengeance is greater than truth? That justice is nothing but another word for blood? The youngest judge leaned forward, studying him closely. Ward pressed on, his voice like steel cutting through the noise. We are at a crossroads. If the cubs are executed, the galaxy will cheer for a day. But what then? Hatred will grow stronger. The warlord will point to this trial and say, "See? The galaxy fears us so much it kills even our children." And new wars will rise. New cubs will be born into hate, taught to fight, taught that there is no mercy beyond their own kind. You will not stop bloodshed. You will feed it. Gasps spread through the crowd. The words struck deep because they were true. The cycle of hate had lasted for generations, and here it stood again, ready to be repeated. Ward's voice dropped, quieter now, but sharper. But if you choose mercy, if you choose to let them live, you break that cycle. You show the galaxy that law is stronger than rage, that justice is not blind revenge, but truth tempered with honor. You send a message to every child, every soldier, every soul who has been forced into war. You are not beyond hope. The cubs stared at him, their wide eyes shimmering. Their claws trembled against the chains. They could hardly breathe. No one had ever spoken to them this way, not even their own kind. To hear it from a human, once their enemy, shook them to their core. The crowd erupted again, divided more than ever. Some screamed for execution, their faces twisted with anger. Others shouted for mercy, voices trembling with the weight of possibility. The noise thundered like a storm, shaking the walls. Guards tightened their grips on weapons, fearing a riot. The eldest judge slammed his gavel, calling for silence. His voice was heavy. "Captain Ward, you speak of mercy. You speak of breaking the cycle. But tell us this, why should a human, whose kind has bled at the claws of the Kargith, stand here to defend them? What binds you to this cause?" All eyes turned to Ward. His answer would decide everything. He did not hesitate. His voice was low, steady, filled with memory. Because I've seen too many children die in wars they did not choose. Human children, alien children, innocent lives crushed under the weight of hate. I swore long ago that if I had the power to stop it, I would. That oath brought me here today. I will not stand by while children are condemned for crimes that are not their own. If I must stand alone against the galaxy, then so be it, but I will not abandon them. His words fell into silence. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the banners above seemed frozen, waiting. And then, slowly, a sound rose from the cubs. A word, whispered in their rough, guttural tongue, carried across the still air. Protector. The crowd shifted, murmurs spreading. The word, though alien, was understood by many. Protector. It was a name given not to an enemy, but to a savior. Ward stood unmoving, his eyes locked on the judges. His voice, now final, rang out. The galaxy must choose today. Vengeance or mercy. Rage or honor. Kill them, and you kill your own future. Spare them, and you prove we are greater than the wars that divide us. The chamber trembled with the force of countless voices rising again. But beneath the chaos, beneath the hatred, beneath the fear, a seed had been planted. A choice hung heavy in the air, one that could not be ignored. The judges withdrew to deliberate, their robes trailing behind them. The hall waited in restless silence. Every heartbeat stretched thin. The cubs leaned against each other, whispering softly, their eyes fixed on Ward. In the shadows above, unseen by most, figures moved. The enemies who had tried to silence the cubs were not done. They would not allow mercy to win so easily. Plans had been set. The final act had yet to come. But for now, in that chamber, one human had stood against the galaxy itself, and the galaxy had listened. The great hall of the galactic court was silent. For hours, the crowd had raged, their voices clashing like storms. But now not a sound dared arise. The judges had withdrawn to deliver their verdict, leaving behind a chamber filled with nothing but waiting. Waiting and fear. The cubs sat together on the platform, chained but pressed close, their eyes fixed on the massive doors through which the judges had vanished. Their ears twitched at every sound, their claws dug lightly into the stone floor. They were warriors young, trained to fight. Yet in this moment they looked like nothing more than frightened children waiting for their fate. Captain Elias Ward stood near them, tall and still, his face carved from iron. He did not move, did not rest. His eyes remained on the doors as well, but his body was tense, ready. He knew that what happened next would not be decided only by law. Too many shadows lurked behind the trial, too many enemies waiting to strike. At last, the heavy doors groaned open. The three high judges returned, their robes trailing, their faces pale with the weight of their choice. The chamber filled with sharp whispers as every eye turned toward them. The eldest judge lifted his gavel, and the hall fell silent. His voice echoed, deep and grave. This court has heard the testimony of worlds. This court has seen the evidence brought forward. This court has weighed the cries of vengeance against the weight of truth. And now we deliver our judgment. The pause that followed seemed to stretch across eternity. Every heart in the chamber beat louder. The cubs clutched at each other, trembling. Ward did not move, but his hand rested lightly near his sidearm, as though he expected blades in the shadows. The eldest judge's voice broke the silence. The cubs of the Kargath will not be executed. The chamber exploded. Shouts of rage, cries of relief, gasps of disbelief. Every voice crashed together in a storm that shook the walls. The cubs' eyes widened, their bodies stiff with shock. They had prepared themselves for death, and yet here they still breathed. The judge raised his hand, demanding silence. Slowly, the noise dimmed enough for his words to be heard again. They are guilty of bloodshed, yet the evidence proves they acted under threat of death, with no true choice. Thus, this court spares them the penalty of execution. Instead, they are to be exiled, placed under protection of the Terran delegation until such time as their fate may be decided by the Greater Council. Ward exhaled slowly. Not victory, but survival. A path forward, however narrow. He glanced at the cubs, their eyes locked on him with disbelief and gratitude. The word they had whispered so often burned in their gaze once more. Protector. But not all shared that feeling. Across the hall, fury erupted. Delegates rose in their seats, shouting, demanding the verdict be overturned. Some called for the judges to be stripped of their titles. Others accused Ward of corrupting justice with human tricks. And in the chaos, the shadows moved. A scream cut through the noise as a figure leapt from the gallery, blades gleaming. Another assassin, desperate to finish what the verdict had not. He dove toward the platform, aiming for the cubs. Ward moved instantly. His body was a wall of steel as he shoved the cubs behind him. The assassin's blade slashed down, but Ward caught his arm, twisting hard. The weapon clattered to the floor. Guards rushed forward, but too late. The assassin struck again with his other hand, claws raking across Ward's side. Blood spilled, bright and hot. The cubs cried out, chains rattling as they tried to reach him. Ward gritted his teeth, slammed his fist into the assassin's throat, and sent him crashing to the floor. The guards swarmed in, dragging the attacker away as the chamber descended into chaos once more. Ward stood unsteady, blood seeping from his wound, but his eyes burned with fury. He raised his voice, louder than the storm. "You see," he shouted, "even after the verdict, they try to kill children. This is not justice. It is fear, it is hate. It is a rod of power that poisons this court." The hall froze at his words. For the first time, even those who had shouted for death grew silent. They saw the blood on the floor, saw the cubs cowering behind their defender, saw the human who stood wounded but unbroken. And in that image, many saw the truth they had long tried to deny. The youngest judge rose, his voice carrying over the stunned chamber. "This trial is over. The verdict stands. The cubs will be taken under Terran protection immediately. Let no one raise hand against them again, for do so is to strike against this court itself." Guards unlocked the chains. The cubs stumbled forward, still shaking, still unsure. Ward knelt before them despite the blood staining his side. He met their eyes, one by one. "You're free now," he said quietly. "Not safe. Not yet, but free. And as long as I breathe, no one will take that from you." The smallest cub's eyes filled with tears, though he fought to hold them back. His voice was a whisper, rough and uncertain. "Why do you care so much for us?" Ward's reply was simple. "Because someone has to." The cubs clung to him then, their claws gripping his arm, their trembling bodies pressed against him. For the first time since the trial began, their fear broke into something else, something like hope. The chamber remained divided. Many still burned with rage. Some muttered of betrayal, others of weakness. Yet among them, voices also rose in quiet admiration. They spoke not of the cubs, but of the human who had stood against the galaxy, a single figure unarmed but for truth, who had forced even the most bitter to see differently. Later, when the cubs were led away under Terran guard, whispers followed them. The word protector carried from mouth to mouth, alien tongues speaking in wonder, in anger, in fear. And though the cubs were young, they understood its weight. They would carry it forever. Ward walked behind them, his steps slow from pain, but his posture unbroken. He knew the fight was not over. The shadows that sent assassins would not give up so easily. More battles lay ahead. But for this day, for this moment, he had won, not through force of arms, not through fear, but through defiance, through truth, through the simple belief that children should not die for wars they never chose. And as the cubs disappeared into the corridors of the court, the galaxy itself seemed to shift. Only slightly, only faintly, but enough to prove that even in a universe ruled by hate and vengeance, one voice could still make a difference. Elias Ward stood alone in the hall, blood still staining his side, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the high windows. His voice was low, meant only for himself. Today, mercy survived. And though the galaxy raged, though enemies plotted, though war still loomed in the distance, the words of the cubs echoed softly in his memory, a promise that would follow him through the stars. Protector,